College sports marketing directors are asking themselves this one fundamental question all across America in the age of coronavirus. How can we pivot to reach our fans and still turn a profit? As college athletic departments continue to cut sports in a cost-cutting move, the financial wreckage from the coronavirus pandemic is still remaining devastatingly clear. And that's not even taking into account the projected $4 billion that college athletic departments would have lost if the 2020 college football season wasn't played, according to ESPN. So, how are athletic departments from across the country absorbing this financial pinch, with their seats being empty and no fans being able to attend their events? It's a question that I posed to Josh Remington, the Director of Sports Marketing for SMU Athletics. He joined me this week to discuss how his department is making it work. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Hey Josh, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to be with you to talk a little sports marketing tonight. Great to see you, and thanks for a few minutes, buddy.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
So Josh, I know that in the age of COVID, that a lot of things have changed or been altered because of the pandemic. So I'm wondering if we can start you off by asking you, how, in your opinion, do you think the industry of sports marketing has changed because of the pandemic?
Yeah, well, again, first of all, thanks again for having me on. This is a great opportunity and love chatting about this. I think that's a big question because a lot has changed in the midst of COVID. I think a lot of it, quite frankly, has been good for the industry. I think COVID has brought about an opportunity for some schools who, whether due to their fan base or just due to resources, have not had a chance to catch up to current technology, digital, efforts and things like that. That due to COVID protocols, things like digital ticketing, getting rid of maybe some antiquated marketing processes like schedule cards, printed schedule cards, things like that, have brought about a change that's necessary, but also gives kind of an excuse for it. So I think that's one way that things have changed. I think another is just in how we engage our fan base, right? And that includes alumni and kids club members and everything across the board. So much of it, especially this year, of course, has been contactless or digital and virtual and all these things. But I think that is truly a process that can continue in a lot of ways moving forward, even outside of a quarantine timeframe of, how do we engage with teams more closely and reach fans where they are? Because right now, as anyone would understand with sports, it's a lot easier right now to sit on your couch and watch a game from home. And that takes away the feeling of needing to go into the game in person, even if that is available, especially this year. So, what are those ways that we can continue to engage audiences digitally, but also enhance our brands well enough to bring fans back around campus?
And I'm curious to know, in terms of your budget, how has that sort of evolved because of the pandemic? How are you absorbing sort of the financial losses?
Yeah, so that's been a big topic of focus across our industry, even in conversations I've had recently. The short answer is that it definitely did affect our budget. We have a smaller marketing budget this year than we have typically. And so what that's really brought about, the far majority of resources this year, and I think a lot of schools are experiencing this, but a lot of our resources went directly to simply the operating costs of the athletic department. And so in some ways, marketing feels like the extra stuff, if you will, in a lot of ways of, hey, maybe this year we're not going to be able to do fireworks for team entrances. We may not be able to do as many on-field promotions or have as many, maybe any giveaways because of one, the cost, and two, the contact with fans. And so that has affected our budget. We have found ways to, use the money we do have. And we also have a very supportive fan base as well. And from a development standpoint, they've seen some really generous giving during this pandemic, but that has certainly affected the budget overall. But we've been very fortunate in our department alone at SMU that we have not had, to my knowledge, any large scale layoffs or furloughs. We've had to cut our marketing budget by a good chunk, but we're confident that will come back around in the future. And we've been able to, even in the midst of this pandemic, to feel like we're really making a dent in the Dallas market and really doing our part to expand the SMU brand.
Now, I know that SMU has a smaller marketing budget this year, but the fact that you're in Dallas, a large metropolitan area, does that help at all in sort of reaching new people because Dallas is such a bigger market?
Yes, I believe it does. That's a great question. I think that it certainly does. And one thing we've had, fortunately, the last couple of years has been a good football team. So that has really helped expand the brand. SMU, as you kind of alluded to, is certainly a niche market. It's a smaller private institution with a dedicated fan base that's close in. But how do we, that's the ongoing conversation, is how do we expand this to not just the Highland Park, uptown Dallas area of DFW, but how do we expand this into all the different, demographics and regional locations around the area? So that continues. But I do think that just being in a larger market, to your point, being in a larger market does naturally give us more to pull from, right? So that we have the ability to use our marketing dollars and know that there will be people that are pulling it in and seeing that. So that's been an advantage for sure.
And I know that you're also in charge of the hiring for the marketing department there at SMU. So I'm wondering if you could tell me, when you hire people, what characteristics are you looking for in people to be a asset to your sports marketing department?
Yeah, I love this question because I'm very passionate about personnel and working with a staff that's of high quality and high expectations as well. And so when I look at marketing hiring process within our department, some of the things I look for, and this is true really across the whole board, whether for interns or graduate assistants or full-time positions, are individuals who are hard workers, for one, team players, and like I said, ready to put in the work, but also coachable, very teachable individuals, especially in those younger professional positions of graduate assistants, interns, people that can come in and say, hey, and I mean, I'm still in this position of, hey, I don't know everything. Can you show me how to do more of this? I mean, I had that conversation with my oversight recently of, hey, I don't know this much about this one topic. Can you, next time you guys talk about that, can you loop me in? And so when we hire individuals, we're looking for someone that, sure, they've had maybe some past experience with marketing as an undergraduate intern somewhere else or at SMU, but they're ready for that next role and ready for some ownership. I'm a huge proponent of ownership in one's position and taking advantage of the responsibilities you have and not, taking ownership of it, not having to lean on someone else if you don't need to, but also being coachable enough to where you can bring things to your boss or whoever it is and say, hey, we did it this way, but is there anything you would have done differently? Or what's your opinion on this? And so I want to be, I want to be a good boss myself and know that I'm someone that's approachable in those circumstances too. But overall, like I said, the main things I look for are someone who is a good team player and they're coachable and ready to put in the work.
And Josh, I'm also curious to ask you about the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion and discussion when it comes to hiring individuals with disabilities or hiring students with disabilities or just developing a diverse culture in general? I'm wondering your thoughts on the whole inclusion culture discussion as well.
Absolutely. I think it's a critical discussion. I think, and I came from Illinois State University before I came to SMU, and in both cases, diversity is a huge pillar of everything we do from the university down. To put it simply, I mean, SMU is to its core an equal opportunity employer. We take that very seriously, whether that is based on disabilities or ethnicity, orientation, everything across the board. That is not something that will be a limitation in our hiring practices. It simply will not be. So, when we're rounding out that staff, diversity and inclusion and equity in that scenario is critical. And the thing that we look to continue expanding on are the diverse voices that we have around the table. Who can we involve? What are our blind spots here to different things that we do? And we actually have a diversity council or an inclusion committee that oversees a lot of that, and we go with them and they keep track of the different things that we're doing, and we're working on video series with our student athletes and making sure their voices are heard. But that starts with, to your point, starts with a focus on making sure that we do provide a space where diverse voices are represented. And so again, I take that very seriously, and I'm happy to be in a place, and have been for the multiple steps in my career, where diversity and inclusion is a critical part of what we do.
Absolutely. And I'm also curious to get your thoughts on what would be your advice to anyone that's first starting out in the sports marketing field and is looking for advice on how to advance in the field and industry that you work in, buddy?
Yeah, great question. I think, for one, this kind of goes back to what I was mentioning about who I would look to hire. I would say be willing to put in the work. And so my experience in undergrad, I went to a small school called Grace College up in Indiana, and it was impressed upon me very early in my time there that, hey, if you want to get a job in sports, you're going to have to start putting in some work before you even graduate. And that meant volunteering at sporting events to get something on your resume, having some informational interviews with folks that you would, like to follow in their footsteps maybe, or even just to learn about what they do, and seek out those internships. And so that's how I tried to build my path early on, and was fortunate to have some great positions early on. But I would say, for one, yeah, be willing to put in the work. There are some things about our industry that make it fun. I mean, obviously, a lot of people see the exterior of, hey, you get to be sideline at a basketball game or a football game that's on ESPN, which is great. That's a fun part of what we do. But there's also a lot of hours. There's a ton of hours. They're on nights and weekends and holidays, and that is a certain part when you talk about the buy-in of our industry. Be ready for just that. Be ready to buy into the work that's needed to put in. And for some, that means be willing to take some unpaid internships, maybe even after you graduate undergrad, or take a little more time to have those steps. Be willing to relocate as well. So there are certainly some precautions one should know about, before they jump in, but it is an incredibly rewarding industry that I love being a part of. I'm passionate about what I do, and having the opportunity to impact fan bases I've been a part of. But also, it's just a family. I mean, honestly, the culture within the college athletics landscape that I'm a part of, with our, umbrella organizations and networking opportunities, things like that, your circles will grow smaller and smaller. And so the earlier you can start and be willing to learn and put in the work, it will be a very rewarding industry to work in.
And I'm curious to also ask you, how do you think uh, advancements in the industry will change within the next 3 and 5 years? And how do you think the overall landscape of your field will change within the same time frame?
Yeah, I think that's a great point to kind of lean into. I think there's a couple ways that I would answer this. For one, the whole image and likeness discussion with representation of student athletes is going to be a big discussion here in the next couple of years of what does that model look like? Is that going to change? Does the amateurism of college athletics take a different form in the next couple of years, or what does that look like? And then secondly, in terms of how we reach our fan bases and what does marketing look like, for my role, it is by far becoming more and more data driven. And it has been for a long time, but so much about what we do is based on analytics and studying the back end of advertising and social media usage and followings and things of that nature, that so many decisions, even now and moving forward, will be based on the data and what do we know about our fan base, and how much can we know, and not in like a creepy way, but just generally like, hey, we would love to grow this fan that's maybe just a parent of a kids club member into being some sort of a season ticket holder. So what do we, how can we build that brand loyalty, if you will? So that's a big focus. But again, so much of that is data driven, and some of the larger groups in our industry, Paciolan Ticketing and Marketing Solutions, Learfield IMG with representation of marketing elements and things, and the resources that they carry. Fanatics is another one when it comes to merchandising and things like that. The data that's behind some of those companies of really just showing how well we can navigate our industry and the markets that we're a part of, that's only going to continue. So it's great to be a part of that industry and see the ways that those things are moving and continuing to learn as well, because especially digital marketing, there's so much that changes so often. That's one thing when you look at the next 3 to 5 years in terms of what's evolving. The one thing that'll stay the same is that things are always changing. So I think that that'll continue, and it's fun to be a part of it and continuing to learn.
Hey, don't be afraid to be nimble, right?
Right, exactly. Yep.
Hey, I'm also, as you know, the NCAA is looking at, as you had mentioned before, paying athletes for likeness in their names. I'm wondering from a marketing perspective whether you think that would be a benefit or a drawback for a college marketing department in terms of recruiting and certainly helping to market a university better if you're allowed to pay athletes for their likeness and their ability in college.
Mm-hmm. I think, let's see how I can frame this. I think that has the potential to be a slippery slope when it comes to compensation. I think that, but at the same time, understanding that our student athletes and the teams that are competing on the field and putting that work in are some of the greatest, outward facing promoters of our campus and of the school. And so I think that, again, that's going to be an aspect to our roles that is ever changing and that we're going to have to be adaptable to. I mean, we're happy to work with compliance on ways to involve our student athletes with promotional graphics and things of that nature and sponsored content. But, that's going to be an area that certainly does cause a change within what we do. And we're ready to, wait in the wings and see what's going to come of that for sure.
Josh, I know you're a native of Indiana, so I'm wondering, what do you miss most about being back at home, and what have you embraced most about living in Dallas?
Yeah. Proud to be a Hoosier born and raised. I think, although admittedly I grew up an Ohio State fan, so really I got best of both. But
my apologies for the national championship game on Monday, buddy. But
yeah, that was a tough one for most of the game, but still fun to be there though. Early to see them, I wasn't there, but to see them there in that situation. I think, simply put, the things I miss the most about being closer to home are just that, to be closer to family. I don't have any family down here. And so that's one thing that I've come to miss, is having as many opportunities to see family. It's funny, Dallas, gets up to 110 during the summer, and it's very nice this time of year. It's in the 60s today. So there are times though where, in a weird sort of way, I do miss the change of the seasons. Fall in the Midwest is beautiful, and it's, crisp football weather, and it's a great time to be there with the changing of the colors and all that. But Dallas has a little bit of that, but it's later in the year. It's like December instead of October. But that would be some of the main things, and just being closer to my, family and friends I grew up with. But Dallas has been a tremendous place to grow as an individual and build community here. It's fun to be a part of, and I've lived in places like Indianapolis where, it is a larger city, but Dallas, of course, is one of the biggest cities in the country. And I will say it's been something to navigate in terms of, how do you go about life in a large city, and how do you make something so large kind of your own little corner. And so through, social activities, church involvement for me is a big thing. And finding those communities to make a huge place feel a lot smaller has been a lot of fun. And just finding those little things of my favorite taco shop and my favorite golf course, and different things to go out and do. Having professional sports where in a normal year you could go out on a Tuesday and drive 15 minutes and go to a Dallas Stars hockey game. Like it's fun as a sports lover, and I also enjoy music and food and all those great things that you can find in a big city. And so there's no shortage for sure of things to get out and do. Now, obviously, COVID has kind of thrown a wrench in that a little bit, but looking forward to times when things are open back up again. The one thing I will say that's been a blessing during COVID has been the lack of as much traffic. It's been a little easier to get out and about around Dallas when more people are working from home. So
I can certainly appreciate that. And I'm also curious to know when you're not working, what do you like to do for fun? And then what do you want your legacy to be defined by both
oh man,
personally and professionally?
yeah, that's a big question. I think in terms of my pastimes, I enjoy getting out and running. I enjoyed that. I'm a part of a workout group here in town that I get out with a couple times a week, which is nice, socially distanced, of course. And so that's a big part of that. I enjoy being, like I said, a part of a church community, having a group of guys I hang out with, and just finding those ways to get out on the town and do some fun things. I mean, quite honestly, I'm 29 years old. I still enjoy video games from time to time. So playing a little Madden here or there, recreating some playoff matchups that are coming up, I do that from time to time. So, I do enjoy that. And that's a big part of it. In terms of a legacy, I think, quite honestly, my biggest thing as a believer is that I leave the world a better place than I found it. And that if I can point people to my faith in Christ as being the biggest thing about me, that I've done what I can in that regard. And hopefully that leaves a positive impact. I think another aspect, again, that kind of plays off that, but interpersonally, hoping that my legacy is one of having been a great people person who leaves a positive impact on others in a lot of ways. And whether that's just having an intentional conversation and listening really well, or being a good friend that someone can lean on. That's really important to me. And I'm big on community and living peaceably with all, if you will, is a huge thing that I try to live by. And then when it comes to, I guess, a professional legacy, I want to be known as someone who was dependable and could execute on ideas. And as a marketing person, I think it's important to identify your role within a team. And so, and the natural answer, of course, is, well, are you, it feels like the right answer should be, well, I'm a leader, of course. Like that's how, it feels like the right answer. Well, the beautiful thing is that there's so much more you can be within a team as opposed to just leader and follower. You can be the execution person. You can be the creative, spark plug. You can be the collaborator, the communicator. And so I think one of my legacies I would love to leave is being someone who is dependable. When I'm given a project, I was ready to do it. I was going to work hard and see it through, but also was someone who was a collaborator, who was going to be looping in everyone that might feel like they're on the fringe of the discussion and making them a part of it. And that is what I pride myself on. But lastly, the legacy that I really truly want to leave when it comes to work is just seeing that in others that come after me, of former interns of mine that now work in the industry, former graduate assistants that have moved on, and seeing them succeed. That is similar to like a coaching tree. It's like that to me is the greatest pride of what I do, is seeing others that have had the opportunity to coach and bring up past me, because I had countless people that mentored me when I was coming up. And so now being in a position where I've more frequently had an opportunity to do the same for others, I take that very seriously, because that's a big responsibility, but it's one of the greatest joys of this career.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with paying it forward. And Josh, my last question for you is, if people want to get connected with you personally or with SMU Athletics, how's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can reach out to me. My email is on our staff directory, but jremington@smu.edu is my email. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on and off Twitter occasionally with an account there, but smumustangs.com is our website for all things athletics. And we've got a lot of great things coming up. It's going to be a busy spring, but a great time to be a Mustang, and we're excited for it.
Hey, fantastic, Josh. I really want to thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to me about the state of college sports marketing and a little bit about your personal journey as well. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I want to thank you for being here tonight. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, appreciate you. It really, again, you're an inspiration, and it's really been a lot of fun to chat with you, and looking forward to seeing big things from you as well.